Ezra Hashem, today's daf is Masechta Menachos Daf Ches, number 8. And we're going to start from Daf Zayin Omid Beis, about 3 lines from the bottom. Umi Omar Rab Lazar Hachi. Did Rab Lazar say so? What did Rab Lazar say? On the top of the page of Zayin Omid Beis, towards the top, actually towards the first third of the page, we're going to read it inside. Rab Lazar said, Af bedam loy kidesh. What does that mean? We learned yesterday that when it comes to Kabbalah Saddam, catching the blood, so let's say there's the Kohen has to sprinkle against the curtain, right? As you can see in this picture over here. So he has to sprinkle 7 sprinkles. So what happens if he caught, let's say, 3 sprinkles in one vessel and 4 sprinkles in the other vessel, and then combined it? Hi, Steve. We just began. So we learned yesterday that Rabbi Lazar said that if a Kohen catches 3 sprinkles, he's supposed to sprinkle 7, and he caught 3 sprinkles in one vessel and 4 sprinkles in another vessel. So each one did not have the shiur, and then combined it. It's no good. In order for Kabbalah to be good, you have to catch enough blood of the shiur of 7 sprinkles, right? So that's the din. Now, the Gemara is going to extend that question to another service. Now, let's just read psukim, which you may be familiar with these psukim in Parshas Tzav. The Torah tells us that there's a korban of Aaron Ubanov, that every day Aaron, the Kohen Gadol, had to bring a korban mincha. What did he do? He had to bring asiris ha'efa soilas, about 4 pounds. Let's call it 4 pounds of flour. What did you do with those 4 pounds of flours? He bakes 12 breads. When I say bread, it's not chametz bread; it's matzah bread. But they had a way of making it thicker. And what did he do with those 12 breads? So the Torah tells us machzisa b'vaykel, machzisa b'arv. You have to throw on the mizbeach 6 loaves on the morning and 6 loaves at night. Not only did the Kohen have to do this, Kohen Gadol do this every day, but when the son was inaugurated for the first time, let's say he did the service the first time, he brought this mincha as well. But a regular Kohen didn't bring it every day. And it had a very interesting way of making it. You had to scald it in hot water, bake it, and then fry it. So I have the pictures over here, right over here. After you made a loaf, you scald it with hot water. You see, it's called chalita. Then they bake it. Then they do tigun, which is you put it on a flat pan and fry it. So after baking, you fry it. Now they fold it over and then they throw it on the mizbeach. So 6 in the morning and 6 at night. That's how they did it. 6 in the morning. Now, the shear to make those 12 loaves is 4 pounds, asiris, isarai. Now, the question is, when you makadesh that isar in a flour in the pan in the Beis Hamikdash, do you have to put the entire 4 pounds in the pan at one time, or can you do it half and half? That's the Gemara is going to deal with. Well, we already saw by blood you can't do it half and half. So that's the Gemara's question. Umi Omar Rab Lazar Hachi. You see 2 lines from the bottom. Did Rab Lazar say you can't split the bloods into 2 different cups, and 3 and 4, and then combine it? No, you have to do it all at once. 7 sprinkles should be caught in 1 cup. Boy, Itmar, but we learned Chavise Kohen Gadol, the loaves brought by a Kohen Gadol, you had to bring the entire isaron at one time. And if you did it half, if you brought, let's say, 2 pounds in one vessel and 2 pounds in another kodesh vessel, it will not be holy if you did it in halves. That's what Rabbi Yochanan said. Rabbi Lazar says, no. Since you're going to end up bringing it 6 loaves during the morning, 6 loaves at night, then you can initially put it in the pan in halves, 2 pounds at a time. So that's what Rabbi Lazar said. So you see, you don't have to have the full thing in one time. So, but yet by blood, Rabbi Lazar said, it has to be the full shear in one time in the cup. Now we go to Amid Aleph. Then Isa, if it's true, Rabbi Lazar holds that by blood, it has to be there at one time, and it's not half. You can't be Mekadesh it with a half a shear. So let us leilaf midam. Let us learn mincha from the bloods. That just like by bloods, you say it doesn't work. By mincha, Rabbi Lazar should say it doesn't work either. The chitem, are you going to say Rabbi Lazar minosam nosam legamer? Rabbi Lazar, when it comes to kachim, he just because you find something by dam, it doesn't work by anywhere else. So maybe he doesn't learn one matter from another matter. So the truth is not so. When it comes to kachim, Rabbi Lazar says that you can learn something from something. Why? Rabbi Lazar says, mincha shekmatza behechel kashera. The mincha, if you went into the hechel to do the kmitza, it's kosher. Let's get a second temple picture. Where do you do the kmitza? If a regular Jew brings, you see the temple on here, the diagram. So where does the Jew stand? Where does the Jew stand when he brings a mincha? So you see where this blue line is, and the kohen does the kmitza over here. What happens if the kohen took the pan with the flour and went into the heichal and did the kmitza over there? So the Gemara says it's good. Why? Because you learned from the kmitza done by the shulchan. There was a certain kmitza done by the shulchan, because we learned yesterday by the shulchan, they also took off the 2 spoons of levina, and they took that from the shulchan, and they did sort of like a kmitza, because that is the kmitza of the shulchan, where you take the spoon off and be makrav it. So we see kmitza was done in the heichal, so you could learn one mincha from another mincha, just like the mincha of the shulchan is done in the heichal. So any mincha could be done in the heichal. So we see this concept that Rabbi Lazar learns ideas from each other. That's the question. So if so, why don't we say we learn mincha from the dam? Answers the Gemara. The mincha and mincha yolaf. You could learn a halacha that applies by one mincha can apply by another mincha. Mincha midam lo yolaf. But a mincha, a halacha that applies by blood, and you want to learn it, teach it, it should teach a mincha. So they're 2 different things. Lo yolaf, it doesn't work. They don't teach each other. Says the Gemara, mincha miyolaf. Does Rabbi Lazar agree that from one mincha to another mincha, you could learn an idea? That one mincha could teach another mincha a halacha? But Tanya, we learned in a brisa, there's a halacha like this. Let's take a regular mincha. Okay, let's take a look at a regular mincha. As you know, a regular mincha, what do they do? Okay, a regular mincha has flour in it. You take a kmitza, and then you put it into the pan over here, as you can see, and then sprinkle it. And you put levina, and then you put it on the mizbeach. What happens if some of the flour fell out right before you did the kmitza? The amount of flour fell on the floor. So the din is it's puzzle, right? So the Gemara says like this. Rabbi Lezer says, Ad shaloi pirka nifras lachma. Let's say by the lechem upon him. Before they didn't remove the old showbreads from the table, Ad shaloi pirka nifras lachma. One of the breads fell on the floor. One of the 12 breads fell on the floor and became ruined. So halechem puzzle. Lechems, all the breads are puzzle to be eaten. They makter all of as bzichen, and you don't take this 2 spoons and makter it on the mizbeach. Mishapirka nifras lachma, but once you remove the breads off the table and brought the new show breads on, and then one of the breads fell on the floor, so then halechem puzzle, the lechem is puzzle, makter all of as bzichen, but you can continue to put the spoons on the mizbeach. Again, once a week they remove the show breads from this table over here, as you can see. So if after they remove the bread, somebody, one of the breads fell off and fell on the floor and became ruined, you still will be makter the zvicha. And the Amar Ablaza, loy pirka mamish, you don't even have to remove the breads off the table. If it's the time, if the Zman of, let's say, 1 o'clock Shabbos afternoon, when they're supposed to remove the breads off, it's Afal Pish Loy Pirka, even if they didn't physically remove the breads off, Kimisha Parka Dami. It's as if it's removed, and therefore, if one of the breads became puzzle, still you would do the bezicha. The amai to have a kemincha shechaser kaidim kamitza. Why is it kosher to bring the bezicha when in a regular mincha, as you can see over here, if before you did the kamitza, some of the flour fell out, then you don't do kamitza. You don't bring anything on the mizbeach. So if one of the breads fell off the table, so why would you continue to bring the bezicha? Don't you learn that doesn't the regular mincha teach the showbreads a halacha? That's the question. To have a mincha shechaser kaidim kamitza. So the Gemara says hol loy kasha. That's not difficult, because in a regular mincha, before you did the kamitza, so if the flour fell out, yes, the mincha is possible. Don't do kamitza, but by the showbreads, there's a built-in kamitza over here, because you always have the kamitza, because the kamitza, the levina, is in a spoon, is in a ladle already, so it's already set aside. So it became possible. Some of the mincha was lost. The showbreads were lost after you did the kamitza. So the Gemara says, "Halay kasha mincha loy bara." Regular mincha, you didn't set aside the kamitza. But here, here you have a clear what's the kamitza. The kivan shegiyas man lefroi command the parka. Since it's reached the time that you're supposed to remove the showbreads, it's already kamitza being done. So therefore, if one of the breads fall on the floor, you can continue bringing the mezichin on the mizbeach, because the mezichin automatically is the kamitza. But what happened? Wait a second. Elami ata tehavik shirayim shechosru bein kamitza laktara. They maktir and kaimetzaleim. There is an opinion that even after you make the kamitza, on a regular mincha, even after you make the kamitza, if some of the flour fell on the floor, you don't continue to be maktir the kamitza. So why is it that if you took the showbreads off the table with the 2 spoons, one of the breads fall on the floor, you could continue to be maktir the kamitza? Why? So the Gemara says, why can you continue to be maktir the bezicha? Because la piltaininu, it's a machlekes. Reb Lazar savad la command the yama. Reb Lazar holds of the opinion shirayim shechasru ben kamitza laktara. If the rest of the flour went missing after you did the kamitza, before you did the haktara on the mizbeach, makter kaimetzalein, you still continue with the haktara. So even so, that's by a regular mincha. If after you did the kamitza, some of the flour was lost, okay, then the rest of the flour is puzzle, I guess. But the kamitza you continue throwing on the mizbeach. However, same idea. But the bezichin, if one of the koyens that carrying the 12 showbreads, one of the showbreads fell off and became spoiled, so you won't eat the rest of the showbreads, but you continue to be makter the bezichin. Bottom line over here is, what does Rab Lazar hold? Again, that Rab Lazar holds by a minchas chavitin. Oh, the Gemara is going to repeat it. Gufa, chavite kohen gadol, the offering that was brought by the kohen gadol every day, and they needed 4 pounds of flour. It cannot be kadosh halfway. That means you have to put the 4 pounds at one shot into a pan, a clay sharis. Rab Lazar says you don't have to. You could put it into a 2 pound. You could do 2 pounds at a time. So you could do 2 pounds in the morning and 2 pounds at night. Since you're baking only 6 loaves in the morning, half of what you're going to do, you could make it. You could magdash it in half. Now the psukim seem to say that you should do it all at once. You bring a tenth of a silas. You bring 4 pounds, and then the Torah tells you divide it in half. But Reb Lazar says it doesn't mean. Reb Lazar says, b'diavad, if you only brought half, if you only mekadesh half, that's good enough as well. So the Gemara asks a question: Amar Rab Acha, my Talmud Rabbi Yochanan. What's the reason of Rabbi Yochanan? Why does the whole thing have to be put into a klisharis at one time? Amakra, because the pasuk says mincha machatzisa, have mincha, bring the 4 pounds, and then divide it in half. Then you could put it divided in half. But first, you got to put the full 4 pounds into a klisharis. I'm saying 4 pounds because that's what it's 3.9 pounds is a sarin silas. Meisvei. So the Gemara asks, the Brisa says, you didn't bring it in halves. Ella maybe Yisar Shalom. The Brisa says first you bring a full Yisarain and then you divide it in half. The Tanya we learned in the Brisa. Another Brisa says who maybe if it would say mincha machzis, then as the Brisa says, then I would say that the Kohen Gadol brings half in the morning and then half Yisarain in the afternoon. But the Torah doesn't say that. The Torah says first bring the whole Yisarain and then divide it in half. So the question is against Rish Lakish. How does Rish Lakish say that you could bring it in halves? Answers the Gemara, Lemitzvah. The truth is Rish Lakish agrees that lechatchila you should bring the whole 4 pounds. But b'diavad, if you only brought 2 pounds, if you only mekadosh 2 pounds at a time, that's good enough. If you look in the pasuk when the Torah says brings the psukim of the minchas chavitin, the Torah says chok olam. You have to do it precisely this way, and therefore, how does Rish Lakish say? B'diavad, you could be mekadosh a half a isaron at a time. Answers the Gemara. That's the point. The point is that you have to bring it from your house, a Yisarin. The Kohen brings a Yisarin from his house. Being Mekadesh it in a Keli in the base of English, you could do 2 pounds at a time, but when you bring it from your house, then it has to be 1 Yisarin, and not that he's bringing 2 pounds and then going home later in the afternoon to bring the other 2 pounds. Says the Gemara, Omi Omar Rabbi Yochanan Hachi. The Rabbi Yochanan says that if you put half a shear into a klisharis, it's mekadosh. Well, it's not mekadosh. Rabbi Yochanan says if you put a half a shear, a half a isaroin in a klisharis, it's not mekadosh. Well, itma, but we learned itma hitfresh chatzi isaroin v'dad dei lahoisif. If you just put a half a isaroin in a klisharis, but your intention is to add more flour, what happens to that half of Yisarim until you add the more flour? Rav Abba ain't a Kaddish. Rav says it's not holy because he didn't add the more flour yet. Rabbi Yochanan Amar Kaddish, it's holy. Since your intention is to add more, even the half of Yisarim becomes holy. Then Isa, if it's true, Leila from Mechavitim, why didn't Rabbi Yochanan say, you learn from Chavitim that it doesn't work? It's not, you can't be Mekadesh a half of Yisarim. So then the Gemara, I'm going to skip down. The Gemara says Rabbi Yochanan does learn ideas from each other, because the Gemara says, Rabbi Yochanan, Shlomim sheshachtam behechel kasherim. A shlomim, if you want to say Rabbi Yochanan holds you can't learn items from items, ideas from ideas in kachim, that's not true. Rabbi Yochanan says a shlomim that you shechted in the hechel, it's kosher. Diksiv ushchachte pesach oyamim shleitafu chamam meikar. We here's the picture of the Beis HaMikdash, right? So the picture of the Beis HaMikdash is you have to shecht a carbon shlamim. You can shecht in the north, you can shecht in the south, but the Brisa teaches you that if you shecht in the sanctuary itself, it's also kosher. Just like you could say you could shecht outside the sanctuary, you could shecht inside the sanctuary. So we learn an idea. If shechita works in the Azara, it could work in the Heichal. So you do learn ideas from each other. So how does Rabbi Yochanan not? How come by Chavitim, Rabbi Yochanan says if you put a half a Yisarein, it's not kedusha, and by a regular mincha, if you put a half a Yisarein, it is kadosh. And says the Gemara, the key is that the lahoisav shani, because the second case Rabbi Yochanan is talking about where he put a half a Yisarein, but his intention was to add more. So since his intention was to add more, even Rabbi Yochanan would say that half a Yisarein has a kedusha to it. Tanya, we learned in a brisa, Malayim, ein Malayim el shleimim. The Amar Rabbi Yosef said, "Bizman shein da'at l'hoisef, al bizman she'da'at l'hoisef, rishon kadosh." So we see that there is a Rabbi Yosef himself says that if your intention is to add more, even if you put a half a shear into the klisharis, it would become holy. So let's break it down. Rabbi Yochanan says if you just put a half a shear into the keli, it's not holy. But if you put a half a shear and you say out loud that I'm going to add more to this, so right then and there, the vessel will make the flour holy. But Rav doesn't hold that way. Why? Rav b'chavitim commands svirle. Rav, who does he hold like? We can skip a little bit. Rav Rabbi Yochanan svirle. Rav holds like Rabbi Yochanan, who held by chavitim. Rav doesn't make a differentiation whether you have intention to adding, or certainly not. If you put just a half a shear into the klisharis, it doesn't become holy. Now the Gemara is just going to quote something that Rav said just right a line before, and we're going to repeat it. Amar Rav. Rav said, Mincha kedoisha b'lo shem. Really, what are the ingredients of a mincha? We went through this, but the ingredients of a mincha is basically 3 ingredients. What do you have? You have, you make flour, right? You have oil, and you have frankincense. Flour, oil, and frankincense. Comes along Rav. Let's say you're supposed to have all 3. Let's say you just put one of the ingredients in a klisharis with the shear. Amarav mincha kedosha b'lo shemen. If you put it without oil into a klisharis, it's holy. Shekei metzina b'lechem aponim b'lo shekei metzina b'lechem aponim. Because we find the lechem aponim, the showbreads, did not have, which was a type of mincha, did not have oil in them. Those breads on the table were not made of oil. If you put b'lo levon, if you put without put the in klisharis flour without frankincense, it's also good. Shekei metzina b'minchas nesachim, because we find by minchas nesachim it did not have levina. If you don't put any oil or any frankincense, it's also good. Shekei metzina b'minchas chayte, because in a minchas chayte, certain minchas did not have oil or frankincense. So if you just put the flour into a klisharis, it is holy. Let's say you put v'shemen u'levina. If you just put oil into kachi hai b'loy hai v'hai b'loy hai. If you put levina alone in a klisharis, it becomes holy. If you put shemen alone in a klisharis, it becomes holy, even though they're part of the 3 ingredients of a mincha soilus. Why? Shemen alone, shekei metzina b'loy shemen shamatzaira. Because sometimes we find that oil was brought as a standalone product by a mitzvah. Levina, frankincense alone becomes holy in a kli vessel. Because you find the frankincense that came on the table, right? This keli this spoon that was on this ladle that was on the shulchan only had frankincense. So frankincense alone could be holy. So basically, what we learned over here is that although there are 3 ingredients to make a regular mincha, but if you put into the keli just one of those ingredients, the item becomes holy. Rab Chanina says, we go to Amid Beis, Loizu kedusha b'loizu, like zu kedusha b'loizu. If it's a mincha that needs all 3 ingredients, they cannot become kadosh unless you have all 3 ingredients into the vessel. Like here, unless you have all 3 ingredients, you see, it's an oily dough with the frankincense, then only then will become kadosh. So the Gemara says, Rab Chanina Yisor and Lama Nimshach. Then why was there in the Beis Hamikdash a keli that only measured flour? Answers the Gemara, L'minchas chayta, because the minchas chayta only needed flour. V'loig Lama Nimshach. Why was there a vessel to measure out a loig of oil? Because of the loig shemitzayra, because the mitzayra needed a loig. So the bottom line is, of course, Rab Chanina agrees that various karbonas, various minchas, were just flour, just oil, just levina. But if the ingredients, if the mincha that you're bringing called for 3 ingredients, then in order for it to become holy, you have to put all 3 ingredients in the kli shares. And if you don't do that, it doesn't become holy. Says the Gemara, Rav. Shmuel holds like Rav that you can't be mekadesh half. The Tanah, we learned in the Mishnah, kol alach mekachin es alach. If it's a vessel that holds liquid, it's only mekadesh liquids. Midesh yavish, mekadesh is yavish. If it's a dry vessel in the Beis Hamikdash, it can only mekadesh dry foods. It can't do the reverse. If it's a liquid type of vessel, it can't make a dry food holy, and the opposite is true. Shmuel said, only measuring cups. Aval mizrakois are cups that were used specifically, as you can see in this picture, a mizrak, to hold blood in it. So a mizrak that could hold blood, it could hold mekachis is yavish. That could even be kadesh if you put flour in that blood cup. So then it could be mekadesh. It could make it holy. Why? Because you find by the Nesiim, Shneim, Malayim, Soilus, Blue, Hashem, Lemincha. By Nesiim, it says they were holding blood cups full of flour mixed with oil. But maybe it's a mincha mixed with oil is like a liquid. Malay, that's not true. Like definitely a flour mixed with liquid, even if it was mixed with oil, still there are parts of it that are dry that the oil didn't get to. And yet that blood cup was mekadesh, the mincha. So the blood cup is the only exception. A blood cup could be mekadesh, something that's dry food. And now the Gemara, the Iba Yisema, and if you want, I can tell you, mincha legabidam kiyavish dami. And even if you want to say that you want to call a mincha with oil as liquid, but it's not as liquid as blood. Now, before we learned over here before, one more minute, another 2 minutes, and then we'll stop. Before we learned over before, Amar Ablazer said, mincha shekmatza behechal kashera shekebetzinu besilik bezichem. The mincha that you did the kamitza in the sanctuary is kosher. Again, let's see the diagram. Here's the base of Mikdash. Where the blue is, that's where you're supposed to do the kamitza. The Gemara says that if you did the kamitza in the sanctuary, it's also kosher. So the Gemara asks a question, and with this will stop. The Gemara asks a question: how could it be kosher? Just because you see that kamitza was done on the shulchan by removing of the bazicham, so every mincha you can do in the sanctuary. Masav Rabbi Yirmiyah said, "V'kamatz misham." The Torah tells you on a regular mincha, do the kamitza over there. Mimokon sheragli hazar oimdos. You could only do the kamitza. It seems to say, the Brisa says, that you could only do the kamitza only at the opening of the azara, by the opening of the temple, where only Yisrael could stand. You see, this area over here where the blue is where Yisraelim could stand. So it comes to maybe it's trying to tell you that you can't do kamitza in the heichal. The Beseira learns from that pasuk something else. But the bottom line is the pasuk says the kamatz misham. You could only do kamitza only in that area. So the Gemara goes all the way down. No, Ela Itzrach Salkadach. I'm skipping down. Hoyel Ksiv Ukriva Elakayim B'Gishal Mizbeach B'Kometz. In other words, kamitza could be done all over the Azon. Really, you can do it anywhere in the base of Mikdash kamitza, after that wall, you come in. But I would have thought that the Torah was, since part of the mincha required, you see the coin over here, when he got the mincha from you before the kamitza, had to bring it over to the mizbeach. So I would have thought that since he had to touch the flour offering to the mizbeach, he should do the kamitza there. So the Torah says, no, he could go back and do the kamitza where the Yisrael is standing. But the truth be told, that he could do the kamitza anywhere. And that's what the Gemara says. I would have thought, just like the Hagosha touching it had to be on the southwest corner of the Mizbeach, I thought the kamitza has to be done there. Kamash Malam, that's why the Torah says that it could be done anywhere. It could be done where the Yisrael is standing, but not to exclude that it cannot be done in the Heichel. It could really be done anywhere in the Beis HaMikdash. Okay, so ends Daf. Yes.